to imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
Total protonic reversal. Protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal with your host, Conan Neutron. Broadcasting from a secret underground lair in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
A gigantic middle finger to everything that is rock about music, rock and roll, and corporate power.
The thing is, though, if you don't laugh, you're going to go on a killing spree with sharpened nails.
Confidence of a hero or a fool, I wasn't exactly certain which.
Could not be more professional.
It means something. It means something. You know, that's my take. What's yours?
Protonic reversal.
That's like a science thing, right?
Indeed it is. It is a science thing. It is a science place. It's a scientific fact that we're all up in your face. It is time, once again, for the one, the only Protonic reversal. Welcome to it. Special edition, special rescheduled several times edition, to put it bluntly. But very happy to be bringing you a conversation with two returning guests, one of them twice even, which is Danielle and Alexander of Hacke de who are on tour. They're almost always on tour, but there's so much to discuss with them, and there's a best of happening. There's all kinds of stuff. But instead of me trying to summarize it, I'm just going to bring them on in one moment because, of course, welcome to Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. I'm your host, Conan Neutron. I'm a rock and roll lifer that has been touring and recording for over 25 years now. I use this very long-running podcast to talk about music with musicians whose art I enjoy and respect, but they may not be household names. If this is your first time listening to the show, copies of it are available anywhere you get your podcasts, protonicreversal.com for the archives. But if you want to get episodes sooner, $1 a month at patreon.com/protonicreversal is a great way to accomplish that goal. And it gets episodes sooner, helps support the show, and is generally just a nice thing to do. Now, if you'd like to share the show, or even just a single episode, on social media, things along those lines, that's always appreciated. Liking, subscribing, all that stuff. It helps beat back the almighty algorithmic overlords. And again, it's just a darn nice thing to do. So that's enough of that nonsense. Let's hear from Alexander and Danielle on location, a.k.a. Hacke de Picciotto. It's so great to not just hear from you, but see you. I think this is the first one we've done with video, right? So
yeah,
I appreciate you taking the effort. I know you're real busy. Scheduling this was difficult.
Yeah,
and I appreciate you taking the time to do it because you're out and doing it. Where are you now?
Well, at the moment we're in Berlin, but we're
Right.
supposed to be in Greece because we had 2 shows in Greece, but they were canceled. So we're surprisingly in Berlin, which is kind of nice.
Right, and I saw something about that, and I don't want to push for details or dox anyone or anything, but that seemed like that was a bit of a drag, unexpected behavior, right?
Absolutely, because we were looking forward to going there. It's always fun playing there. The Greek are wild.
Fantastic. And I mean, it's safe to say that y'all are definitely back at it. I know that there's, Europe, Japan, right? I mean, there's all kinds of things on deck. It feels like, with COVID, obviously there was lots of things that happened that were going to happen that didn't. Alexander, I know you know that as well.
Yeah. Well, things get canceled, rescheduled, and then rescheduled things get rescheduled, and and
rescheduled again, just like this show, just like this episode. But how's it feel to actually be back at it? How are the audiences? Because obviously I know from U.S. audiences, but I haven't had a lot of people report in from European audiences. Do you think it means more for people now that it was taken away for a couple of years?
Well, I mean, it's become more difficult. A lot of clubs closed. A lot of people have to really think about what shows they're going to go see. They don't go out as often anymore. Prices have gone up like crazy in every way. So it's not easy for anybody, I don't think. It's not easy for the musicians or the audiences. You know, it's difficult. But the audiences that do come are amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and shows start on time now.
You know, I had noticed that too. Punk rock time is apparently dead, which is lovely. No one will mourn that. You know, like that's okay. So tell me about. Tell me about. I'm trying to remember. I was going to ask about keepsakes. I'm trying to remember when the last time you were both on, because Danielle, you were on for your record a couple years ago, but it's actually, see, and it feels like it's been 3 weeks. It feels like it's been 3 years. Either one could be true. You know,
it's been 3 years.
It's been 3 years. It's
yeah,
crazy.
Yeah.
Like I think Keepsakes has come out since then. Last
year actually. That came out in 23.
How did that come together?
Well, Keepsakes we recorded in the midst of the pandemic, and when we realized what is the things that we miss the most, or what is the most important issues for us in a situation like the lockdown and the isolation, was we were missing our friends, and so we decided to write an album about the people that we love and the people that we miss. And then finally in 2022, we managed to go back on tour again. And the first show that we actually played on the 22 tour was in Napoli, in Naples, in a venue called Auditorium Novecento. And that was before Keepsakes, obviously. Yeah, before Keepsakes, when we got to go back on tour with the Silver Threshold. The first show we played was the Auditorium Novecento in Napoli, which turned out to be a recording studio. And we recorded that show there and also came back to record Keepsakes there. Now, after Keepsakes is out, we came back there again and recorded that live show as well. And that's the basis for this new best of tongue-in-cheek live album.
Right. I'm reminded of when they didn't pull the trigger on it, but when the Cars put out their first record, they were gonna call it the best of the Cars, right? Which I was like, oh, that's great, because they didn't think they'd ever make a second record, so that was hilarious. No, but I think for a band like yours, which there's a lot to parse and a lot of detail for folks to dig into if they feel so inclined, it can be kind of daunting that when a band's been around for a while, when there's a larger catalog, where do you start? Okay, well, if you start here, you can kind of find like an entry point in, and then I really like this stuff. Let me check out this record. I really like this stuff. Let's check this out. And I do think it plays well as a compendium.
Well, I mean, that's kind of why we did it, because we had the two recordings by chance. I mean, they just recorded it because they're recording studios. When we played live, they were like, well, we're going to do a recording, obviously.
Yeah.
And so when we were listening to it, we thought, there's two things that are interesting about it. One, to listen to a live concert in good quality, you realize how many songs have changed over the years.
Of course.
Which is interesting. And then we realized that if we pick out the songs that have changed a lot over the years, we actually have a perfect cross selection of all of our albums. So we thought if we were like release this as a live album, we're going to have an album where somebody who doesn't know our music is going to be able to kind of discover the whole thing. And the people that do know our music are going to be able to listen to the old versions and new versions, which is interesting too, because playing live makes them have a little bit more energy and they're more in your face and stuff. So we thought that's actually kind of interesting. So we asked our record company, Mute, and they were enthusiastic. So we said, okay, let's do, a limited edition to make it really special.
Right. Yeah.
This album.
Which that's another thing I've personally found that people are really getting into the limited editionness of it. I mean, that was the case pre-COVID too, but especially post-COVID, I feel like it's become more important. And again, maybe in a way that people just didn't know what they had. But I love, and I noticed that too with the best of, because if you're a live band, anytime you play live, unless you're playing to recorded tracks, there's going to be some things that are going to change and they're going to evolve, and you're going to grow into the songs, and the songs will grow and change. And Maybe they won't go too far afield from where they started, but they will change. And that's part of what makes live bands so interesting and cool. And I think that's a great way to present your music, especially because you've got, I mean, again, they're talking about it's over 20 years, right? I mean, it's a lot. Like, it's a lot to pull from. And I think it shows that, these are songs you're excited to play. They're not like, oh, that was cool, we did that, and now let's move on with our lives. But I would imagine, right? I mean, like if they're in the live set, I would imagine you enjoy playing them.
Yeah, well, like in the end, we're servants. We serve the material that becomes its own entity. Every piece becomes an entity that has certain demands already in the studio. When we first create it, it becomes like a golem, like a like a Frankenstein kind of creation that says like, yes, but I want this reverb, or no, I want a break right here, and then also when you play it live, it develops different demands, and we serve that, and so it is a constant mutation. Actually, it's not just like a development. Some of the songs actually have mutated to
they're very different, but in a way that has served the purpose to have them continue to be compositions that exist in the world. And there was something, this is going to sound like a crazy analogy, and so I'm not going to say who it's by, but I watched a thing last night where a musician was speaking about serving the needs of that individual show and the songs growing, expanding, and changing to serve the needs of the live experience that shows everyone that they're there right then, not just watching a recording or whatever. That like the set, even if it's the same set, it has to adapt to the audience, or like what are you even doing? And there was Bruce Springsteen, if you could believe it. There's a great road. He's the boss. I wouldn't even call myself like a huge Bruce Springsteen head, but I was like, I bet this is interesting. I bet this is it. And oh my God, it was fantastic.
He says a lot of really good stuff. I've been listening to a couple of things he said lately too, and I've been like, wow, respect.
And then also, did you know that Alan Vega, Suicide, kind of made a living, or was sustained because Bruce Springsteen played Dream Baby Dream by Suicide after or before every show, like in a stadium. So they got like massive amounts of royalties for that. And Bruce love for Alan, makes me love him as well.
Absolutely. And Alex, what you just said is absolutely, that's why I was originally, as a young punk rocker, I was like, oh, maybe I'll give this guy a fair shake. Because I was like, wait, Suicide? Like the keyboard Suicide, right? Like with the like that, because it just didn't make sense. Because this is this big arena rock star. And I'm thinking of Born in the USA and stuff like that. And it's like, oh no, he has a deep abiding love for music. Still seeks out new music all the time. Yeah. Which I know some people that don't do that. Where it's like, okay, sure, that like maybe should, respect. Endless respect. But again, this isn't about Bruce Springsteen. This is about Hacke Picciotto. I think it's great. I think this best of record, which does seem a little tongue in cheek. I'm glad you said that, because like, what's the best of? Like, you're not done making music. I mean, like, but then you can have the second best of. That's good. Right? The not quite the best of. Yeah, exactly. But I think that reinterpreting like these songs and giving them life live, and some of them, they're not going to change that much, and some are going to change a lot, and they're all snapshots.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when we started doing that. I mean, when we decided that we're going to do it, I started really thinking about what does it actually mean to play live, and what is the whole thing about. It's not only about going on stage and playing your songs the way they should be, but it's like this interaction between you, yourself, and the music, and yourself, the music, and the audience. And that's why every show is different. I mean, some audiences react really strongly to one song. Some audiences react strongly to another song. Some audiences don't react at all, although they really, really like it. Like, for instance, in Finland, they're such respectful listeners that they hardly clap. And you're like, oh my God, they hate us. But they don't. They're just showing their respect. So it's like, it's such a live thing, playing live. Yeah. And that kind of, I feel, and we've also been told also you can hear that on the recordings, you know?
Absolutely. And well, I'm glad you mentioned that too, because that is a thing that hit me kind of like a Mack truck with the whole like, oh, you're not applauding. No, they despise this. You know, and it's like, oh no, that's just how that audience is interacting with the music, which is like, oh, okay. You know, like that's, and that's the thing, because I think what you do is so, like, crosses that line between, you know, art installation and like soundtrack and like all that kind of whatever that you would call that world, but it's very much in the live band world as well, and so you can get different kinds of audiences, though, different kinds of reactions, right? You know, if you're sitting there with a bunch of people standing there, like, you know, with a mug of beer in their hand, and you're sitting with people that, you know, have the monocle in, maybe, you know, like it could be a totally different reaction. But I feel like you can operate in both worlds, and you do operate in both worlds. Do you think that because you're almost back to being nomads at this point, right? I mean, it seems like you're out on the road more than you're home. Would that be a fair assessment?
This year for sure, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, and it was kind of like a ramp up, but I feel that you get a very unique viewpoint on life beyond even just somebody that tours in a band when you're out more than your quote unquote home. Like home is like wherever you lay your head to a certain degree, and you meet a lot of different kinds of people and see a lot of different kinds of audiences. Has there been an evolution or change with audiences in general, other than, you know, maybe, you know, shows starting on time and
Well, you know that lifestyle really had an effect on us in particular, because if you know, like before, I mean, I've been touring all my life. I've been doing it for more than 40 years, and in the first couple of decades, I would be traveling around like a pirate, you know. You just like go to every place, you loot, and you gather these you know, artifacts, you know, and then you build little shrines in your hotel room, and then you bring it all back home to your abode, you know, and like build this memory palace of whatnot, you know. But if you're constantly traveling, you first of all, you have to find a center within yourself, because there's no place that you can withdraw to, where you can go and hide after being out and, you know, projecting and being the show person. Instead, you have to be pretty much in equilibrium with yourself. And also, just nowadays, you cannot gather as many materialistic things as you would like to in order to feel secure. You know, so you have to find other means, and it's basically the most rewarding thing that we get is to have these experiences and to meet the people and to see the places and every day just like be very proud of ourselves that we managed to carry those many hundred kilos of equipment, you know, yet again to another location
without feeling over dead.
Oh yeah,
just
the struggle is real, as they say. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and that's something where you also are able to build rapport and relationships with people where, you know, you're not just seeing them once every like 3 or 4 years. Like you're seeing them like more often, and faces become more familiar. It seems like it's almost it has by nature, it has to be almost more of a Zen exercise.
Oh yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. I mean, you know, doing that kind of lifestyle, unless you're doing it like, you know, like maybe the Rolling Stones, where every musician has his own bus.
Right.
You know, you have a whole village with you. Doing it the way we do it, because we do it by train mainly, because we try to keep our footprint small. If you don't become super healthy, I mean, you are going to keel over dead at one point, because it's just impossible. It's just too exhausting. I mean, like this week we're going to be going to Bratislava, which means that we have to leave at 7 a.m, which means getting up at 4:30 in the morning, taking train until 5.
Right.
You know, changing the train in between with 100 kilos of luggage, and then playing a show at 7. And then the day after, we had the same thing going back to Augsburg. So if you're not like healthy and somehow trying to like eat healthy stuff, not drinking, all the other stuff, forget about it.
Right.
No, it's impossible. It's just so exhausting. And especially we've been like this year, we've done it the whole year. We had one day in between the Neubauten show and our next tour. Neubauten were in Antwerpen. We had one day to unpack and repack our stuff, and then we went to Italy to do a show there. So that's the way it's been. It's been like insane.
Quick turnover. Yeah.
Yeah. So you really have to.
And we don't do steroids either.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's interesting. And I think it's interesting because amongst the stories told of musicians and artists and performers, rarely do you see that side of it, which is to say that what you're talking about, which is just real pragmatic concerns. Getting from point A to point B with a skeleton crew of people, and not having the luxury of, like, I saw this, Andy Summers, they did a I watched this on an airplane, by the way. There's a documentary of some book he did, and it was The Police, and was showing their reunion tour. And the second he was done on stage, he handed his guitar to a guy, walked back, got into a car that immediately went to a plane that went somewhere else. And I was like, okay, so that's what people think music is.
Right.
And it isn't. It just isn't.
No,
but it doesn't mean that it's ignoble or that there isn't value to it. It's just you never see those kinds of stories. Everything, and I blame Almost Famous for this, that Cameron Crowe movie, where everyone just is, temporarily embarrassed superstars, I call it. But
lately I started to because it really is. We don't have a crew. It really is just
it's you guys. Yeah.
And lately I started traveling with. I have this flashlight that I can attach to my forehead, which comes really handy when you have to break down the equipment while the techno DJ is playing full blast and the strobes are going on and all that.
Man.
So
yeah.
And I mean, the thing is, of course, that we are pretty successful. We're not like a beginner's band, but times have become so difficult, with Spotify and all those things, that there's that 1% that has that plane and that has that limousine, and then there's all the other ones that you think, oh, they've been doing it for a long time. They're like taking those planes too. Don't believe that. That's the way it is. And like you were saying, the venues are having problems. Everybody's having, so it's become tough. But like Alex was saying, you can't carry along a lot of stuff, can't get stuff in the cities. Sometimes you feel like getting nice things, because it's just too heavy to carry. And that's why the interaction with the audience is so important.
Because that isn't a physical artifact, but it is an artifact, right? Like that.
Exactly. Because it kind of makes it worth it. Like when we were we played in France, in Lyon, a couple of weeks ago, and this girl came up to me and she said, I love that one song that you did. And you mentioned a loaf of bread in it. It's called All Are Welcome. Right. And she said, I work in a bakery and I baked you a loaf of bread. And I almost started crying. Aww. So touching. And it was almost biblical. I mean, she gave me the bread. I was like, wow.
Sure.
it was so moving. And stuff like that, or somebody else in Greece came and she said, I love your music. And she gave me this little necklace. And she says, I want you to be safe. I'm giving this to you to be safe. A talisman, and stuff like that. Or people come up to us and say, you really touched me. You made me cry or you made me laugh. Those are the things that you never forget, and that's what gives you the strength to continue, no matter how difficult it is. Right.
Yeah. I mean, Springsteen said the same thing last night in that documentary. No, but I'm joking. But it does. That stuff does matter, and I do think it's fascinating because your band is the perfect example of the kind of acts I like to have on this show, which is a band that's doing something interesting, and they're working, and the work is good, but you may not know who they are. Maybe you do. Okay, fine, but you may not know who they are if you're just the average Joe on the street. But there's a reason, there's a story, there's a reason, the music is worthwhile. There's just not a lot of platforms because there's so many platforms out there, but then everyone's chasing, this is the new hot thing or whatever. I'm not remotely interested in that. I'm way more interested, how do you not kill each other? Always be, you've been in the same room. Yeah. Be in the same room, in general, playing music, traveling.
We are pretty
good question.
We are pretty good at resolving our issues, obviously. I remember they asked ZZ Top how come they managed to get, to be like 50 years old, and they said like 3 separate buses. Since we since we don't have that luxury,
Separate trains? Yeah, what are you going to do?
You know what's great?
Headphones. There you go.
Headphones are good, and generally contemplative media, is reading is good, and gathering information and impressions privately that we can then discuss, that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could write a book, I would imagine.
Yeah.
How
to keep a relationship in spite of being together for 24 hours a day.
Yeah, all the time.
Be a bestseller.
Yeah. Oh my God. You kidding me? Yeah, that you make your first million on that one. Absolutely. On a book in 2024, almost 2025.
That has always been my dream, but basically for Danielle to become a best-selling author, so I can, with the money she makes, I can buy all this high-end studio equipment and just record like fart sounds and stuff like that, for my own pleasure.
Oh, check it out! I put it through an Echoplex.
You would do that.
Yeah. Well, look, why wouldn't you? Well, and that's I feel like being multidisciplinarians, right? Like I know Danielle, we talked last time you were on solo. We talked a bit about stuff that you have done like with film and writing and whatnot. I feel like for some people, it's I just do the one thing. That's all I do. Period, and that's fine, and people can be fulfilled in that. But I feel like there's almost a diaspora with you two for your interest as well as tying in the media. Like, I mean, look, it's the most lame thing in the world to call predominantly instrumental music cinematic, because what does that even mean? Well, what cinema, first of all, and what movie? But I think it does apply to you guys. But I think that it you wouldn't get what the feelings that you're talking about that the audience is experiencing from the music if there wasn't this rich tapestry of interest and other forms of art that are involved that are going into it. Like it's we're all works in progress. We're all the sum of our experiences. But I think it really comes through as cosmopolitan isn't quite the right word, but it comes off interesting and unique. And I think that's something that, I mean, we talked a bit about what you were reading last time, and things along those lines. And I feel like all that's part of the puzzle. And I feel like that must be something that you have to deal with just to maintain sanity. You have to engage with some manner of art as well to be an artist. So I'm curious, how does that factor into the creativity aspect? How does that factor into the presentation of the live band, the traveling, the humanness of it all?
Well, we do immerse ourselves in quite lofty subjects, and the stuff that Danielle has been really into her environmental research, and I I'm this philosophy freshman, and and we do read a lot, and we we work with quite archaic concepts also in our art, the ritualistic aspect of the performances. For us, it is really important what is happening on stage between we actually play the songs, right. and these, setting up a stage, or setting up like a sacred space in order to do what we do. All of this is really important. And we don't really see ourselves as like entertainers very much, we try to make the audience forget where they parked their cars. Or even
I like that. Yeah, that's good.
At best, even their names or whatever. But so it's we try to really push everyone involved into a different realm. It's not about just going somewhere and watching a show. And also, I don't really like people who play our music as background music. I don't like, actually, basically, I don't like music as background music myself very much. I want to, like, I can't stop my analytic listening abilities for one, and I, I don't like to hear people talk when I listen to music.
Well, because if you're engaging with it on that deeper level, then yeah, that's what that,
Yeah.
those are opposite things, right? Well, and then I heard the most horrific term recently that it was applied to something on Netflix and the slop that they're putting in the bucket for the little piggies to engage with, called second screen media. To which I asked, "What is that? That sounds terrible." And what it is it's a movie or streaming series or whatever that's designed to be on in the background while someone is doing something else on their phone.
Wow, really?
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
Wow.
And I was like,
that really
oh my
is like
God.
pink. That's like pink sludge, right? That's like audible pink sludge.
It's the most horrific thing I'd heard all year, and I've watched horror movies with some degree of regularity. I was like, that's atrocious. That's so offensive to my sensibilities that it defies description.
Oh, there's all these offensive words. I mean, what's a content? What's a content creator?
Yeah.
Horrible. But it's interesting. Their question is interesting because there's musicians that do music, and their music is like an entity of its own. It doesn't really have anything to do with what's happening around the musician. It's just like it's just a song. It's a good song, and then there's musicians that kind of express their feeling towards the world and put that in the music, and it's like an expression of what we feel, see, think, or whatever. And we definitely belong to that category. So basically everything we read and see and learn and whatever, that all goes into the music. So it is really kind of the result of all the things that we experience on tour, and also within ourselves, or everything kind of. It's kind of like the condensed everything that
Right,
we've
sure.
experienced coming out as a wall of sound.
Well, and it's not that there's any wrong way to do it, right? Like if someone is,
No, of course not.
for whatever reason, just this incredible, like autistic genius that never engages with anything else in the world. Lovely. Those are some of my favorite artists, right? But it's also, it's interesting that how that can manifest, and I call it divine inspiration versus divine perspiration sometimes too, where it's like, and that's also, y'all are constantly doing the work, and then I know that having the studio space to experiment and play around with works. How do you keep yourself honest with that though? Like as far as are we making something of value, or are we just having a good time? Like what are we doing here?
Oh, we're very critical. We speak a lot about what we're doing, we think a lot about, we question ourselves all the time in all kinds of different ways. And being authentic and having integrity is something I think nowadays it's really important to question yourself about that all the time anyway. What's influencing me? What bubble am I in? How am I privileged? What am I listening to? You have to ask yourself that all the time, and also ask that yourself about your music. So I don't know if there's another way of doing it, but we do it that way. We just question everything all the time.
Yeah, and we love to do commissioned works. We love to write for movies, do film scores and stuff like that. But we always raise the bar very high for ourselves. We don't just produce something. For me, it is very important that everything has like a hidden something, or a meaning. That might only be interesting for me, but it has to be in
Right.
one way or another. Right?
Well, and usually, if it's interesting to you, there is someone somewhere that will find that interesting as well. And even if they don't discover it immediately, and that's what when I said earlier that I feel like a lot of your music rewards multiple listens, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about, where if someone is not doing a second screen media situation, and they're listening to the music, then they might find something like, oh, that's kind of interesting. That's cool. I didn't notice that before. That's a weird like hook that you wouldn't have expect, that you just thought was some random thing happening. And that happens all the time with your music. And that's extremely my deal. Like I love that kind of thing. Like anything that's designed just to be like, you listen to it once and you like it a little less every time you listen to it, not my thing.
No, I neither.
And that stuff does exist for sure.
I would like it less and less.
Yeah, it's like every time you hear it, it's like I thought I liked this, and I don't think I do anymore. Yeah,
boring.
and also there's no. But I think that it's. I probably mentioned this last time. I think there's a new crop of filmmakers that are much more in the spirit of the various new wave movements of the various countries and regions, interested in partnering with musicians to, like, let's create an experience together. Let's have this be intermelded. I was thinking, I'm thinking about it because in the movie show I do, where I'm co-hosting, we're doing the animation Akira. And I had not watched this in years. I have a VHS copy of it somewhere in this basement somewhere, right? See, it's good not to accumulate too much stuff, because I don't even have a VCR anymore. Like, how would I watch this? But it has personal meaning to me, right? But the way that the music is intrinsically linked with the animation and what's happening at the time, I was like, wow, it's crazy that you don't even see that level of detail now on these, huge mega billion-dollar companies pumping out these animated features. And it's like, this is like, there's artistry to this. Like, even if you don't think the story's interesting at all, animation's not your form, the artistry of how the music was melded intrinsically was on the screen was like, this is fantastic. This is beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, you have to realize that the audible component makes 50% of the experience. And that is very often misunderstood particularly in Germany, by productions where they think that the music or the score is just like a luxurious interior design for their high-end car, like the production being this, this Maserati, and then they want like a nice leather upholstery in there, and the leather upholstery is the music that they commission.
But I mean, I think that that's an area which is in which Germany is very different from the States. In general, I mean, that's one of the reasons why we really like touring in the States, is because people have a different attitude towards music. Music has been like in people's lives in the U.S. from like, since forever. In Germany, it hasn't had that strong of an effect for a long, didn't. And you can tell that the young producers, the young film producers, have a completely different attitude towards music than the older ones do. Because the young ones, they've had this whole music thing now for a long time, and they've gotten all the films also from Netflix or wherever, where there's interesting music. There's like, Billie Eilish or whatever underneath True Detective or whatever. And so they understand.
Great example, by the way, because I was like, really? Okay, am I shopping for pants right now? What's happening?
But it's like, they've understood that it can make it more interesting, that it's an important thing. And Alex has been doing film music for 20 years now. We've been doing film music together for a couple of years as well. And we could really tell when the age shifted of, old producers disappearing and younger ones coming up, that it suddenly became so much easier as a music composer to work with them, because they had a completely different understanding of music, which is really great.
You know that you are old when you think that the 80s were 20 years ago.
Oh man, don't get me started on that.
Yeah, but you started doing, you've done film music for 40 years. I was thinking of when you were doing music with Fatih Hacke. That was 2004. That's 20 years ago.
All right.
Well, and
he's been doing music since 40 years. I'm sorry.
He's a timeless, ageless vampire. It's okay. Yeah. But I think that, but it's a good point, right? Because I think, I rewatched World on a Wire, the Fassbender movie recently. And I was like, oh yeah, Albatross is in here. Like, that's like a diegetic sound, like the Peter Green Fleetwood Mac. Like, it was this, okay, that's a Some of the choices were like, wow, it really works in here, but it's like it works because it's intrinsic to the story, and it's in which it's something that I think needle drop society has sort of become like, oh yeah, let's have this pop song and let's have this, and everyone can be like, hey, look, I recognize that. Okay, well, is it doing anything for what you're seeing on the screen? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. It's not, but I think that there's a whole. There is a crop in the way that like the indie film is gone almost, but there is like what used to be like the category of what we think of as indie films is still alive and thriving, and they're sometimes able to find their audiences. I think that's very encouraging.
It's a matter of zeitgeist, all of this.
Right.
Like interesting is, for example, that in the olden days, in a movie, if you had a flashback, right, it would be colored like sepia,
right?
Like in like in dark brown tones, because you would associate these colors with old pictures, and therefore it must be a flashback. Nowadays, and it started with those Sherlock Holmes movies here with the Downing Jr. What's his name?
Oh, right, yeah.
You're right, and there, the flashbacks for the first time were in like overexposed blue, because nowadays, this generation, you associate that with like old
VHS
printouts,
right. Yes,
like laser prints or photocopies or something. They go brighter. They lose contrast when they get old. Right,
yes.
And so therefore you associate that with a flashback, and I think that also happens. That happens with sound a lot too, like like the idea of tinnitus, for example. Or like this. Like when after an explosion or a gunshot, you often have this. There's a high pitch thing, and that they put that in a movie. They wouldn't have not have done that a couple of decades ago, and also the idea that you can just cut sound altogether from a movie. That's a fairly new thing that would have never happened in a movie from the 80s or even 90s. That you have like an entire scene in silence. And these things are. It's great that these things are developing, I think.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good evolution, and that's the kind of thing where creativity. Why don't we just try doing this? Like this is going to sound funny. You're familiar with the movie? It's okay if you have A Quiet Place. Are you familiar with this? Like, there are these creatures and like sound, like they're attracted to sound. So if you say anything or make any noise, they'll come get you. Right?
Yeah.
Amazing concept. Kind of okay movie, but
based on the Muppet Show, though, right? Don't you have these extraterrestrials wasn't it in the Muppet Show or Sesame Street even? They have these extraterrestrials down, and then they imitate, they mimic all the sounds they hear. And then there's a telephone ringing on the windows.
Radio. Yeah. I remember. That's funny. What I was just gonna say is, I would have liked that movie like a full star better if they had the gumption to just not have a soundtrack. Because they had like a soundtrack with a score that does like all the things you expect it to be doing. But if you just had it in silence, where if you're seeing in a theater and someone's like coughing or eating or something, then it's like, that would be so much more of a bold decision.
Yeah.
So I guess we're not there yet.
No.
Also, if we're gonna make a movie like that, you're catering to my sensibilities, which is not going to get you like millions of dollars, right? Like that's an art house sensibility.
Well, it happened a few times now that, basically all the science fiction movies, from Star Wars or whatever, there is no sound in space, like the spaceships shooting at each other. You don't hear that. And only a few times lately they had that actually where they portrayed space
as silent
in the sound vacuum that it actually is. I mean, what do I know? I've never been there. But I've been told.
Well, what is it? In space, nobody can hear you scream. It's like Ridley Scott, Alien. Oh my God! Well, first of all, what a tagline.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, because there's no sound in space, dude. That's why. But anyway, So getting back. So by the way, Alexander, I had Dwayne Dennison, your ensemble compatriot, on recently. He said to say hello after the show.
Oh,
I
thank you.
Was having you on. He's a busy boy. Boy, that band's going gangbusters right now. That's a
very, very old friends.
Yeah.
I've known these guys for a long time.
Did you? When did you? Did you meet him in Neubauten?
I first met Yao when he was in Scratch Acid the first time he came to.
Oh, wow.
They came to Berlin actually. That was 84 or 86 or something. So we've known each other for quite some time now.
Yeah. I was gonna say it. Everything could just be 2 weeks or 20 years now. We don't even have to mention the times. It's
40.
okay. Yeah. He's like, oh my God, don't get me started. No, that's so yeah. You mentioned the going from Neubauten to Hacke Picciotto in like one day time. Do you even like? How does that even? That's a lot of music, first of all, to keep track of. But like, how did just from a pure logistics standpoint? Did you already have a set prepared that you knew you were going to do, or?
Well, I mean, our tour was the best of. So the best of our songs.
It's all stuff you already know. And
we've been playing for a long time. All the different ones. A couple we hadn't played for, but we knew them, so it was okay. I mean, we rehearsed that one day a lot. But it was okay.
And also equipment wise,
had it been a new album with new music, we wouldn't have been able to do it.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah.
That's like
So and also equipment wise, I have completely different. I play different guitar and different effects and everything. It's a completely different setup. So if I would lose my entire Neubauten equipment, I would still have the Hacke de Picciotto equipment. And
do you just send it away? Like, how do you? I mean, just cart it around with you? Like, how does that even logistically? How does that work?
With Neubauten is a little more luxurious. There, everything travels in trucks. And
guitar has its own airplane, right? Yeah.
No, it's in a flight case, in a proper flight case, in a truck somewhere, and then shows up at the show. And with Hacke de Picciotto, it's in a soft case, and I carry it with me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's just. That's a lot. That's a lot of logistics to have to deal with. I mean, it's a lot of logistics to have to deal with to tour in general. But if you're going from like one very different, just from stage presentation, very different band to the other, like it seems like that would just be whiplash to a certain degree.
There was this one day during the Neubauten tour where we were invited to play a show on an off day of Neubauten in Berlin, and we did. That was nuts. And the funniest part about it was that we had to take a train, and we were left at this train station, a little train station where we had to push a bell, and then the door would open. We'd be able to go on the track. It was like something out of the last century. That was so surreal. And it was like 7 a.m. too, I think. It was
getting a dumbwaiter afterwards. Yeah, like what?
There's situations where it's nuts.
One time we were doing a residency in Canada, and then we had to play on the Biennale in Venice, the art festival in Venice.
Okay.
And then the next day we had to do something in Canada.
In Athens. We did in Athens. And it was really, really hot. And then we had to fly back to Canada to perform there.
Like
that was crazy.
Three shows in 3 different countries and 2 different continents. And
holy moly!
Yeah, that was insane. Yeah. That was really insane. But we tried to do that as little as possible because of the footprint thing again. I'm really into the whole environmental thing and sustainable thing, and if you're touring that much, you really have to kind of keep an eye on what you're doing, because otherwise it's not okay. And Neubauten do most of it by bus, which is really good because it's
since the pandemic.
So
we're in
everyone's in one vehicle. It's a little more fuel efficient than 17 cars all driving around.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we do everything by train, and once in a while, very rarely we fly. So we're doing our best.
Right.
So we flew to Japan for 7 days, 3 weeks ago, and I'm still in somewhat the Asian time schedule.
Oh, so your schedule's flipped a little bit.
Yeah. So it's
jet lag.
It's it's weird. I can't say that I'm jet lag. I'm just not.
You are.
She'll say it for you. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, my soul is still floating over the Pacific Ocean.
Just jet lag.
Somewhere.
AKA jet lag, right? We get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's great. And the Japan shows were cool. That was awesome.
They were nice. They were nice. We were asked there also to do a couple of panels, which was fun.
Oh, cool.
We really liked doing panels. So they asked us to speak about Berlin in the 80s, you know, the music development in the 80s, and then Berlin in the 90s. It's always fun because you get to know a place differently when you're doing stuff like that. You get questions, and you have somebody on stage that's talking with you. So
right.
That was really, I always love that. I love it when it's like a mixture of, I don't know, screenings, panels, and concerts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like a mixed, truly mixed media, I guess, if you stop and think about it, right?
Yeah.
It's about as mixed as it gets.
Yeah.
So before we start wrapping up, I realize we never talked about the Mountains of Madness. I'm a big...
Because they are unutterable.
Right, exactly. Yeah, there you go. That's the reason why. We go insane. Anyone listening to the podcast will go insane. No, but I'm a huge Lovecraft fan. Despite the horrific racism, I think he's like a foundational author of the medium. I'm not sure when we first checked. I'm not sure if I was aware of it, but I made a note that I had to remember to ask about the Mountains of Madness. And first of all, fantastic. How did that come to? And for people that don't know, Mountains of Madness, H.P. Lovecraft, the author, is who we're talking about. Characters frequently went insane when they saw visages of things that were unknowable, and et cetera, et cetera. But how did that come to pass?
We were asked by this really huge venue in Berlin to do something for their 10-year anniversary. And we had always wanted to do something with the Tiger Lilies. Because we love, doing productions together with people that are completely different than us, because it kind of creates this weird third entity, which you can't really plan.
Sure, yeah.
And so we asked them, and they said, yes, they'd love to. And Alex, you've always been a fan of H.P. Lovecraft, right? I was always more on the Edgar Allan Poe side, and you were more on the H.P. Lovecraft. So he said, you should read all those books. So I read all the books, and I was like, okay, that's a great idea. Let's do something.
Yeah, 20 minutes of description of the thing you can't describe. Great. Awesome. I'm a sucker for that stuff. It's great.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. And so then we said, okay, how are we going to split it up? And said that in this case, the Tiger Lilies would actually play the acoustic part. Alex would be doing the electronic soundscapes, and I would be doing the visuals, like animations, because I've always wanted to do animated visuals for a live kind of show. And so all of us kind of prepared separately. Tiger Lilies prepared in London. Alex prepared his sonic electronic music, and I just was drawing like crazy. And then we had this one meeting arranged because none of us had time. Tiger Lilies have been on tour for like 30 years straight, and we're always on tour. So it was like, okay, we only have this one weekend where we can meet, and we're going to go to London and meet the Tiger Lilies there. So we went to see them, and we were all super nervous because we didn't know.
You never know.
Work out, and if it didn't, we would have a serious problem because it was a 10th year anniversary of this venue, and we didn't have the time to do anything new either. So we were like, oh my God.
The last thing you want to do is quote unquote phone it in. And by the way, quick interjection, Sparks did a collaboration album with Franz Ferdinand, who I'm only vaguely interested, but the first song was called Collaborations Don't Work.
Yeah.
Which I think is so genius. I was like, amazing. So
That's
anyway,
right.
but that's the kind
possible that they don't.
You never know, right? And that's the thing. And it's for this big event. It's for this big event. You want it to be good.
Event. It's a huge venue. No, really huge.
A very novel concept to them also was simply to rehearse, because they never do that. The Tiger Lilies, because they, the way it works for them is like Martin Jack, the singer and accordion player, he writes the songs, and then he just starts playing them on stage, and everyone has to follow him, and that's how they roll. And then we didn't this one time we rehearsed in London. Actually, it was the day those terrorist attacks happened.
Where the bombs were exploding in a subway. And we were with we had brought along our little speakers on this little trolley because we didn't know if they had speakers in their apartment.
Yeah, so we
were
rehearsed.
like walking through London because there was no subway or bus going because of those bombs. And it was really, really
and
hot.
Then we arrived in Adrian's, the bass player's house, and set up and realized then the other two guys of the Tiger Lilies, they were like walking around. Martin was going like, "Oh, this is not too shabby. This is quite nice." And then we realized they had never been at each other's house before. The fact that they actually had to go and rehearse,
right?
And then didn't have the concept of a rehearsal room or anything. So we met in the bass player's house.
Fantastic.
And the other two had never been there. I mean, they've been playing together or touring together for decades at that point, but they had never been at their private homes.
Yeah. So in any case, to cut it short, it thank God worked out. And we were like, oh, this really works. Like, the cold electronic sounds, the warm acoustic sounds, and the visuals. And so we did like 3 large shows. We did 3 of the shows in this large venue.
Yeah.
And it was sold out every time. People really, really loved it. It was great because we were all just really worried it wasn't going to work. And then we were asked to go and perform it internationally for, I think, 2 years, right? We performed with them.
We toured quite a bit with it.
Yeah.
We played it at the Documenta in Kassel at this big art fair.
And in Greece again, too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so it was.
I love that.
It was fun. And Martin, he chose the songs or the stories, basically. We said, okay, here, read Mountains of Madness and you can choose the stories, whatever you want.
Right.
We're open. And so he chose the ones that were chosen. And I really liked the stories he chose. So a lot of violins.
Right. No, it works really well. And I was kind of sad when I found it. So I'm like, oh, I would have loved to have seen this or known that it existed because you weren't on my radar then.
It was fun. It was really fun.
That's great. Thank you for telling me about that. What do you have? Anything like that you have coming up? I know this is by the time everyone hears this is going to be at least a week, right? So it's like I don't even want to mention your tour dates are coming up because it's going to be like, oh, that already happened, you missed it. But is there anything coming up that you'd like folks to know about?
Yeah, well, we've been commissioned to write music for a theater play by a really fantastic, out there, controversial, unconventional theater group from Paris called Compagnie du Zirep. And the director is Sophie Perez. And if you look them up, Compagnie du Zirep and Sophie Perez, you can see they do like insane productions with and they've been asked us to create something that we can perform live with them. So that will be like a great thing. And we love playing live music for theater. Being involved in a theater production is one of the greatest things ever because it's like being on a ship, like every single person in a theater production has this responsibility to it. It's really it's like being on a sail ship, and it's a fantastic thing to do.
And I really like her because she did an education in masks, so she does like surreal masks, really big ones, and stage sets, which are like a mixture of Dadaism and surrealism. Really great. So it's on the visual aspect of something very special. And we're going to be doing that we're going to be rehearsing with them, I think next year, and the year after we're going to be touring with the theater production. So
that sounds amazing.
Besides touring with our own stuff next year, we're going to be pretty busy doing that.
Yeah, it can be busy little bees for sure. It sounds like you got a full docket. Love it. Love hearing about it. And then, of course, in the show notes, I'll link to the best of record. I know it's limited edition, so if folks want to pick that up, they should probably get on that.
Going fast.
It's like single digits for like the American copies. I know that, so I should probably get on that.
And it is limited edition with a numbered and signed art print of Danielle's artwork inside.
Fantastic.
So it's just black vinyl, no colored vinyl, but it has a limited edition signed and numbered art print.
And it's a double album.
It's a double album.
Yeah. Well, and that's and some people are really into the colored vinyl thing, and some people are like, oh, well, black vinyl sounds better, and this, okay, all right, but whatever. Like that's not.
Steve was supposed to be good.
but it's all like I think that's lovely because if you're making something that's a keepsake for people, then like make it a keepsake, right?
Right.
And that's another way to make it special for the people that are engaging with it. I love that.
We wanted pink glitter, but they said no.
Pink glitter, like was it My Little Pony or something along those lines, like those kinds of that color scheme, or yeah. That's great. Just like studying contrast. Oh wow, I didn't expect that when I opened it up. Oh. Is this are they making a meta commentary?
Pink.
There you go. Miami Vice, Danielle, Alex, it's so lovely to have you. It's been way too long. I can't believe it's been this long since I've had you on. That's my bad. But you always have a home on this show, and hopefully with less scheduling mishaps.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for having us. It's always fun chatting with you.
Yeah, I hope everyone goes and sees you on your many dates and tours and things. Pick up a copy of that best of. Last thing, only canned question I ever ask. I don't remember we did this last time, but if I did, I forgot, so it amounts to the same. So canned question, both of you got to answer. Why do you do what you do? Who wants to go first?
I'm pretty good at it.
Fantastic.
It's the only thing that makes me happy.
Alexander, Danielle, thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Conan.
Till next time.
Bye.
There they go. Hackedepicciotto. Let's hear something off of the best of record recorded live in Napoli. I don't know why I said it like that. That's not even a proper accent. We're going to do Third from the Sun.
Contact with a test. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's the test. Contact Hawaii, contact 100%. Union modulation. Roger Hawaii, radio loud and clear also. Let's use the contact with a test. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, there you go. Is this thing on? Little Hacke Picciotto for you there. Off of the best of Hacke Picciotto live in Napoli. You can get that at hackedepicciotto.bandcamp.com. You get a limited edition vinyl. Going quick. So if you want that vinyl, go get it. Get at it immediately. Name of the show is Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. Thank you so much for listening to it. This is episode 410. The show normally airs Thursdays, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific. Really pushing the limits of that this week, though. Broadcasted live on YouTube. Podcasted later, everywhere. But if you like the show and you want to get episodes sooner, $1 a month at patreon.com/Protonic Reversal helps support the show. And it also gets you those episodes a whole lot quicker. Thanks for folks sharing the show around, liking, subscribing to your platform of choice. All that helps people discover the show, and it's just a darn nice thing to do. You inspect the algorithm, right? Bunch of cool stuff coming up. Jamie Stillman of Earthquaker Devices and Harriet the Spy. Brent Bjork of Caius. And Brent Bjork Trio, Stoner, much more coming up. Jim Kimball of Laughing Hyena's Mule. Finally coming on. Finally coming on. Getting it together. And then, of course, the best of the year episode for
I've got
Top Records. That's coming up as well. It's almost done.
50,000 watts of...
Thanks, everyone, for sticking with it, hanging out on this very long-running show. It's deeply appreciated. Let's see. Anything else to report? Yeah, I'm going to have something to report pretty soon, but nothing right now. So, take of that what you will. There's a lot of episodes this month.
Microphone turns sound into electricity.
Just stay safe out there.
Can you hear me now?
I'll catch you later.
Out on Route 128, dark and lonely. I got my radio on. Can you hear me now? 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 Be in the radio. And that snare drum and that drum roll means we've got a winner. If you're the fifth caller, or any caller at all, welcome to my top 10. I'd like to thank our sponsor. But we haven't got a sponsor. Not if you were the last man on earth. She was prepared to prove it. This one goes out to a special girl. There is no special girl. It's the end of radio. The last announcer plays the last record. The last what? Leaves the transmitter. Circles the globe in search of a listener. Can you hear me now? Is it really broadcasting if there's no one there to receive? It's the end of radio. As we come to the close of our broadcast day, got my radio on. Can you hear me now? This is a test! If this had been a real emergency, hey! This is a real goddamn emergency!